you don't have to come from a target school. You don't have to come from a very prestigious internship to be able to land into MBB, right? And I think my experience coming as an international student at a non-target school kind of illustrates my point here. Obviously, if you are at a target school, perhaps the pipeline is a little bit stronger, which is great. But I really do think it's being precise in the actions you take, how you structure your time throughout the day, whether it's working on networking or case interviews or your PEI interviews for many folks.
Michael is an undergraduate student from Taiwan who broke into BCG in the United States. And in this conversation, we dive into how exactly he did it, extracting some incredible insights that you can apply to your own recruiting journey, and so much more. Michael dives deep into the networking strategy that he used to get interviews, as well as how he navigated the sponsorship conversation, some great pro tips for your case prep strategy, as well as behaviorals, and just a lot more. Just packed with good stuff. There's a lot of information that we talked about. There's links in the show notes for all of it, so make sure you reference that, as there's a lot of good stuff in there. Before we dive in, just want to make sure that you are subscribed wherever you're listening or watching, whether on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or somewhere else. Let us send you a notification every time we publish a new episode. And thank you so much for following. All right, let's dive into the conversation with Michael. Strategy Simplified. I've got a great guest here today. Michael Liu joins us from somewhere in Utah. Michael landed a BCG internship, and we're just going to dive into his journey and extract some wonderful insights for you to be able to apply to your own journey. Whether BCG is at the top of your target list or it's a different firm, there's going to be lots of great learnings from this that you can apply to your own journey. Michael, welcome to Strategy Simplified. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me, Japheth.
All right, let's dive in. Can you just tell us a little about who you are? Give us the 60-second snapshot.
100%. So honored to be here. I'm an avid listener for Strategy Simplified, but a little bit about me. I'm from Taiwan, originally grew up there. I'm here as an international student. I'm going to school in Utah at Brigham Young University. I'm studying finance here, and a little bit about my background. I've worked in financial services, doing internships in hospitality and tourism. And this next summer, I'm grateful to be able to go to the BCG and to explore the consulting world.
Love it. Which office are you breaking into?
I will be going to Dallas, so super excited to go see the Cowboys and also the Mavericks. So,
beautiful. All right. So coming from Taiwan, now you're going to BCG, at least for the summer. What piqued your interest in consulting? Was there an experience or a light bulb moment that kind of shaped that interest?
yeah, I think there was. As a finance major, the typical route, it looks into banking, private equity, and also consulting as well. My brother is actually a banker in Europe, and so I got to learn a lot more about the finance role from his side. And one day he just brought it up. He's like, I feel like you fit really well in the consulting role. And I did, my research and due diligence on what the consulting industry is. I discovered Management Consulted and other many great resources alongside. And I realized that I enjoy working in a wide variety of, industries. And if you look at my background, they're all over the places. And I think that's something that consulting is really unique. It allows you to explore on a case by case basis, and also provides you the opportunity to work with some of the biggest firms and the most intelligent folks out there. So that's kind of my light bulb moment there.
I love that. Well, again, congrats on BCG. Super exciting for you. Huge deal to land at a top firm like BCG. I'm going to go out on a small limb here and assume that you applied to not just BCG, that there was other firms you applied to. Can you quick step back and just talk to us about your overall recruiting process? And then when it comes to BCG, what specifically kind of stood out to you about BCG?
100%. So like I said previously, coming from an international background and as an international student, there's a sponsorship factor that is needed in terms of looking for a job or an internship. And obviously the MBBs are the companies that are able to sponsor the most on average. But I also looked into other firms, the Big Four as an example, or other elite boutique firms that specializes in specific industries. What really stood out to me with BCG, there were a few different factors, but throughout my chats with BCG folks and just throughout the interview process, the people that I met really focused on the feedback culture there, and being able to take in feedback and consistently improve. And that's something that really stood out to me as, as a young professional, you're trying to elevate your career. You want people to be brutally honest with you sometimes as to what you're not doing enough and what you can be doing more to improve on. And so that's something that really stood out to me. And the second piece of it was how friendly the people were at BCG. Throughout the process, the recruiters and also the consultants that I was able to case and practice with, extremely grateful for their help and their feedback. And actually, a funny story, my first round interviewer with the BCG process, our relationship has developed in such a great way that she's actually one of my mentors now and giving me many tips. Obviously, she's further ahead in her career, but that just showcases the type of people that you'll be able to meet at BCG, and that's kind of my reason for choosing them for sure.
I love that. I just spoke with someone from BCG who was there for 10 years, a leader at the firm, and he mentioned that one of the core values that you need for consulting is curiosity and a hunger just to continue learning there. And so that just ties right into the kind of the feedback culture that you talked about there. You mentioned you've talked to a bunch of people at BCG. Walk us just a little bit through that kind of networking process. Like, how did you know who to reach out to? How did you get in touch with them? Like, what did you ask them for? Was it like a call? Was it just over email? Just give us a little color on that.
100%. So in terms of the process of networking, BYU isn't necessarily a target school for consulting firms, but we do have alums that ended up in MBB or different firms in consulting. And so those were kind of my first target folks that I reached out to. And then second of all, LinkedIn and the internet is so diverse these days that you can really find any information, right? So I looked into how does my background match up to this individual's background, and how can I learn from their experience to end up at where I want to be or where they are. And so those were the second group of folks that I reached out to. But initially, I'm a big LinkedIn guy, so I just shoot them a LinkedIn message. Sometimes you can try and guess their email, but I think LinkedIn is quite effective from my experience. And I ask them for 10 to 15 minutes and just learn more about their experience and story. I think there's a big factor in understanding how someone went through the process to be able to take in some of that experience and hone in on yours. And so I asked for a 15-minute coffee chat, and afterwards, if the relationship develops to that state, I'll ask them if they're willing to case me, which I know is a big emphasis here on strategy simplified, and being able to perform well on a case is usually a pretty good indicator as to whether or not you're ready for the consulting recruiting.
That's awesome. You're really putting yourself out there. Like, if you case with someone and you fall on your face, like, that's maybe not the best look for your chances there. And so I just first want to point out that took some guts from you to like step out.
Yeah, 100%. I think there's something towards learning from an actual consultant and how they look at a case. That expertise is something that's really unique, and I think really benefited me in terms of being able to case well in an interview setting. Obviously, I started with the group of friends that I had that were also recruiting for consulting. I know many schools have consulting clubs. Those are usually great resources to get started. And obviously, Management Consulted with the Black Belt program and many other programs out there to support many aspiring consultants out there would be great resources.
I love that. Yeah, we'll put some links in the show notes for those programs and resources that you mentioned. But I mean, love that. And like one more thing I'll just call it with your networking strategy is that you're very specific in what you asked for. So like, a 15-minute call, like that piques my interest versus like, hey, can we connect? Like, no, I don't want to connect with you. But like if you ask me for a 15-minute call on Thursday at 3 p.m., then like, oh, sure, yeah. But let's hop on the phone.
Mm-hmm. 100%. And I actually just wanted to add on that, Japheth, really quick. So I think being intentional, like you just said, with your outreach, I'd like 15 minutes of your time because of XYZ, because maybe you worked here. I was really interested in this. I did my research on this. Those are all helpful ways to get responses out of people. And then the second thing that I thought was really helpful in my journey, and I know Jenny Ray and Numan has mentioned this on the podcast as well, is creating like an Excel sheet to track your chats with people. I have an Excel sheet out there for each individual firm that I'm applying to, and I take notes after every single conversation. All those small details that we talk about, maybe the consultant is going on a trip, and I follow up with them later on to really hone in on that experience and to be genuinely curious in their lives. And I think that's how you're able to build not just a transactional relationship, but also something that can evolve into something bigger, maybe a mentorship or just meeting another professional out there.
I love that. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. I think that's great
Mm-hmm.
additional insight to add there. Are you looking for a change in your consulting career? Stacks, a boutique strategy consulting firm, is hiring now for experienced consultants with 3 to 5 years of private equity consulting experience across its US and London offices. Stacks serves private equity firms and their portfolio companies across several key industries, including tech, healthcare, consumer and retail, industrials, and more. Here are 3 key reasons to consider Stacks as the next stop in your consulting career. Number 1, you'll take charge of your career growth in an entrepreneurial environment. Number 2, you'll create an impact without giving up your weekends. And number 3, you'll get a top-tier compensation and benefits package. What's not to love? Explore open roles now at the link in the show notes or visit stacks.com/careers to get started. Again, that is stacks.com/careers. All right, couple of questions here. Number 1 is, what's your best tip for how to answer the, why BCG question? So I know when BCG asks you, why do you want to work at this firm? They're not just asking you for, an answer that you can find on their website. Like, they're not looking for, something you can just find online. They want, something specific. They're trying to figure out if you've actually done your research. Ideal if you network with folks at the firm. And so I know you kind of answered why BCG earlier, but any kind of tips or mistakes that you'd advise people to avoid when kind of answering this question?
Yeah, I definitely feel like in terms of answering that why BCG question, finding the common denominator between the people that you connected with. What are they all saying about BCG that you might not be able to find on their website, right? And feedback culture was one thing that I discovered. The second thing was, I remember right before my interview, I went on to the BCG's website and I just wanted to understand what their core values are, right? As a firm, what do they believe in? What type of impact are they trying to make? And how does that align with my personal values? I think that's a question that everyone before even submitting the application should ask themselves. And in terms of BCG, something that really stood out and how I answered the why BCG question was the diversity segment. BCG, obviously a global firm. They even have an office in Taiwan where I'm from. And so I'm able to bring in my diverse experience growing up in Asia and Taiwan. I've discovered this unique perspective on business and different acumens that I'm able to bring into BCG. And I want to learn from other people that have those experiences. And I think finding something that's really unique about yourself and aligning that with the firm value or just seeing if it matches at all is a great way to get started and to answer that question.
I love that. And it's like a positioning thing, right? You're not just somebody who's like desperate for a job, willing to accept anything, but you're also like vetting the companies to make sure that they line up with your values, like I said. So I think that's a helpful piece of advice there.
Definitely.
Uh, yeah. So coming back to what you mentioned earlier about sponsorship, right? You're somebody who needed sponsorship, and so we get flooded with emails every week from folks who are asking for help navigating this process. And I know there's a lot of mistakes that people can make when they're like, right, they're navigating this job search, but they need sponsorship. Um, what are some of those common mistakes, and do you have any advice for the people who are going through the process now?
Yeah, I think some common mistakes are, the firms out there, if there are firms that list out that they do require, maybe you have to be a U.S. citizen or they don't sponsor in terms of the working visa. I think understanding that before you apply is extremely important, right? Going back to that original point, there's no point in getting to the final round of an interview and then all of a sudden you realize that they don't sponsor. And now you just spent this much time that you could be utilizing in other firms that do sponsor. Something that really stood out to me for management consulted is there is actually a list of firms out there. I believe that I did my research and looked into it. There are firms that have sponsorships and that database is stored within the management consultant website. And I think that's something that was really interesting to me. So that I don't have to do all my research just outside of the box and be able to look through every single consulting firm that I'm interested in. So I definitely advise everyone that is going through the process to utilize that tool. But understanding that helps you kind of push through that hurdle because at some point it does become a hurdle when you do need sponsorship. But I feel like once you do get an interview invite from these firms that do sponsor, everyone's kind of at the same starting point, and it's just whether or not you can do well in the interview.
I love that. We'll make sure to link to that tool, the sponsorship database of firms who have like historically been known to sponsor
Mhm.
for consulting. So I'm glad you brought that up. Awesome. All right. Well, we kind of talked about networking. We've talked about sponsorship, talked about some of those early things. Let's talk about interviews for a little bit. I mean, this is obviously a very hot topic when it comes to consulting, right? There's a case interview and then there's behavioral interviews. Sometimes the case interview is all that people kind of think about or talk about when it comes to consulting, but there's both sides of it. So let's talk about case for right now. What kind of resources or tools did you personally find most helpful in your process for preparing for the case interview?
Yeah, I think with the casing part, it's such an ambiguous topic, right? It's hard to gauge what a metric is for a successful case because your interviewer may be different. There are multiple resources out there that you're able to utilize in terms of practicing your interview. The first that I started with was just going on YouTube, look at how someone's interacting with an interviewer and understanding what an actual case interview looks like. And once you've seen more of those, you kind of understand the structure, right? It starts with a prompt, you ask some clarifying questions, you dive into a framework, some math, brainstorm, whatnot. Understanding that, I would start practicing cases with maybe a friend or maybe in terms of management consultant or case coaches that could really give you a head start because they're the experts in this case and be able to progress further along that case interview journey. I think something that really helped me in terms of getting ready for interviews was, like I said, I'm an avid listener of Strategy Simplified. You guys do podcasts with actual case interviews on here, but there's also the market outsiders and other industry insights that I'm able to extract and bring it to my case. And that was something that really stood out to many mock interviewers or actual interviewers that I interview with is, oh, okay, Michael understands this industry. He's been following it. But really, I was just listening to Strategy Simplified, and you guys did a great job summarizing that. But I think that's another good resource that I would utilize in terms of getting ready for a case prep. It's really just about repetition and getting good feedback.
Great. The key thing that you didn't say, but you did say, is that you probably won't get better by just reading a book or like watching videos or listening to podcasts. Like those are great resources. We've got tons of them. We like recommend them, but at some point you've got to let the rubber hit the road and actually practice a case, or you will maybe think that you know how to solve a case, but when it comes to it, not good. So
Yeah, 100%.
yeah, just wanted to make sure I extract that good insight from what you shared.
Definitely.
Super helpful there. Appreciate that, Michael. And then the second piece of the case, the interview process, is obviously the fit interview, which is more of a factor in the final round. Still a factor in the first round, but the first round they're more assessing if you can do the job, like if you can like do well in the case. Second round, it becomes a huge part of your overall score. And so I'll just like, what was your preparation for the fit and behavioral interviews?
I think my preparation was quite simple. I knew who I was as a person, and I wanted to connect with the interviewer. I wanted to learn, the questions that we went through today. Why did she choose BCG? What are the specialties that she's been working on? What are the special cases that she's been working on or he's been working on? What insights have they been able to extract for being in the industry for 4 to 5 years, right? Creating a genuine connection, I think it's so important, and especially in this digital era. All of my interviews were online, but I really do believe there's still this connection that could be made virtually, and being able to run with that and be able to, make it not just an interview, but two individuals learning and breaking down a case together was how my interviews felt. And I think that was why it was successful enough to obviously get to the next round. In the partner round, I think from what I've heard is, partners are judging you based on whether or not they trust you enough to leave you with a client. And I think that's so true, right? Because this is a business after all, and you need to be able to carry yourself with confidence. Even though there are hurdles at times within the case, you're able to push through and be able to make a recommendation that influences many other decisions. I think going back to the original question, being able to connect with the interviewer on a person-to-person level is so key.
I love that. Just finding those connection points and really leaning into that human connection, which is, something that's been more difficult when you're only interacting virtually, but still a huge skill, because a lot of your work as a consultant is going to be in person, face to face with another human. And so if you don't have that, it's going to be a little bit of a wonky journey for you.
A little bit of a challenge for sure. Yeah.
A little bit of a challenge. Love that. Looking at the kind of recruiting process as a whole, what's a myth that you would like to bust for people today? Like, what's something, folks believe about interview prep or resumes or anything you want to share? Like, what's one myth you want to bust?
Yeah, the myth I want to bust is you don't have to come from a target school. You don't have to come from a very prestigious internship to be able to land into MBB, right? And I think my experience coming as an international student at a non-target school kind of illustrates my point here. Obviously, if you are at a target school, perhaps the pipeline is a little bit stronger, which is great. But I really do think it's being precise in the actions you take, how you structure your time throughout the day, whether it's working on networking or case interviews or your PEI interviews for many folks. I think on top of that, really finding what's unique about you, because everyone has a value prop, believe it or not. There's something unique about you that you're able to bring to not just consulting firms, but any firms you work with in the future. There's something that you can bring in that is so unique to you, and you just need to be able to help others see that, right? Because they only know you for 30 minutes. And so allowing yourself to shine in those situations is extremely important. And last thing, this is something my basketball coach growing up told me. It's called stacking days. And essentially it just means consistency, consistent repetition. Every day you spend on working on a craft, it gets you closer to your goal and your final destination. And I think packaging all of that together, the myth I wanted to bust was just, it's possible for everyone is kind of where I'm trying to get at.
I love that. All right. Now I just need to like go run through a wall. Motivational coach Michael here.
Oh, not at all. Thank
I think
you.
that's great. That's a great perspective. So yeah, thank you for sharing. I think a lot of folks are going to find that helpful in their journey to this.
Definitely.
Good. Love it. Going back to the part about like, let's speak to international folks right now. You broke in as an international student. Like, what's your best piece of advice to internationals trying to break in the U.S.?
Yeah, I think, I have a soft spot here for international students, as I am one right now. I think hone in on your diverse experience. Hone in on what makes you different than other candidates, right? Coming to America for me and my family wasn't necessarily an easy thing. There's a lot of financial instability that has to play into this. Obviously, applying for a school in your second language and all the different processes, you went through that, and you're able to be here in America, or if you're international, you're prepping for this move into America. I think to all the international students out there, you went through something extremely extraordinary, and being able to recognize that and take that effort into consulting recruiting, or just any recruiting in general, will take you further than you expect. And being able to believe that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and be able to hone in on some of those unique experiences that you have is so important. That's kind of my biggest feedback here, I think.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate your insights, sharing your learnings, and we're just super, super excited to see you go crush it at BCG, nail that return offer, and just go from there. So,
Thank you.
Last question here before we dive into a couple of fun questions. You'll be summaring at BCG. What's kind of one or two things that you're just really looking forward to for day one of the internship?
Yeah, I've been chatting with some upperclassmen that has also gone through this process. Something I'm really excited about is just really getting to work with some of the brightest minds out there in the industry, be able to learn from their experience and build mentorships along the way. I think that's so important as a younger professional, to try and develop more skills and learn from different individuals. So that's definitely the first thing. And the second thing would really just be, I hope I get staffed on a travel case. That's a big draw for me in terms of consulting as well. I love to see different locations and different clients I get to work with. And so those are kind of my top of my bucket list excitements out there for sure.
We'll have to check in for an update on that here in a year or so.
Definitely. For sure.
Love it. All right. A couple of just kind of quick hitting questions, get to know you a little better, as is tradition here on Strategy Simplified. Are you ready?
Yes, I am.
All right. Well, let's talk about basketball. You mentioned kind of lessons learned from your basketball coach. Basketball's been kind of a big part of your life. You played on U18 national basketball team. You're a diehard Lakers fan. Talk to us about your favorite either basketball memory and or like basketball related bucket list item.
Yeah, definitely. I think my favorite basketball memory was I thought I was pretty good in Taiwan and in Asia. I played in different leagues, and I remember coming to America for the first time, and I played against some people here, and I was like, oh my gosh, they're legit, and there's definitely a gap in terms of skill level.
Mhm.
So that's my favorite basketball memory, and then I transitioned to the business route. But on the bucket list item side, I think the Dallas Mavericks. I am so pumped to go see them. I am a Lakers fan ever since Kobe was playing, and Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis now recently moved to Dallas, and so I get to go see them, and that's really exciting. There's three NBA teams in Texas, so I'll make my rounds to each of them. But those are definitely up there on my bucket list.
Okay, I love that. You'll have to send us some photos.
Will do. Definitely will do.
Our last question, you're a bit of a musician. You play at least piano and saxophone.
Hmm.
What's a song, a piece, like a moment that's meaningful to you?
Yeah, I think for piano, I've played piano the longest. There are many pieces that I love to play. City of Stars in La La Land is one of my favorite pieces to play for sure. And on the saxophone, I say I know how to play the saxophone, but I really just know how to play one song. It was in like middle school, high school, in band, and they said that we all have to learn a new instrument. So I know how to play like a specific section of the Phantom of the Opera on the saxophone, and that's all I know how to play. But maybe I'll end up picking up more songs along the way, for sure. So yeah,
I'm sure you'll have plenty of time at BCG.
definitely, hopefully,
Won't be
saxophone
busy
case.
at all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
love it.
Great. Okay. Well, hey, great getting to know you a little bit more on the personal side as well as on the kind of career side. And we're thrilled for your journey to BCG and beyond. Please stay in touch, and we'll have to kind of check in with you for a follow-up episode here in a couple of years to see how it's going. So thanks again for
De-
coming on, Michael. Great. Thanks for sharing.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Japheth. Happy to share and really grateful for this opportunity.
Thanks for tuning in. Make sure that you are subscribed to the podcast wherever you're listening or watching. It does help the show reach new listeners and viewers, and will also tell you whenever we release new content, which is every single week. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you on another episode of Strategy Simplified soon.